Okay, so welcome back, and this is part 4 of the first segment, network attack and defense. And in this part, we will start by looking at some attacks like phishing attacks. So, the way phishing attacks unfold, an attacker usually sends spam that appears to come from, let's say, uwrf.edu or your bank, where it might be your bank is mybank.com, and might have that email might come complete with images from your actual bank or from uwrf.edu, or might have messages that seem to make it look like it's coming from the actual site, and it would be asking to have you do things like log in and change a password because of for various reasons, like you have a full mailbox, or you need to update your server, or you have a large money transfer coming in, and things like that. Some way to entice you to click on a link. So often what will happen is email recipients click on links without actually looking at it, and then they're taken to a fake site set up by the attacker. And it's the kind of thing that happened with, if you remember, the DNC hack in 2016, and also the Republican National Convention. They were attacked the same way too. So what happens is people who are not savvy, like maybe you guys are, click on a link and they take into a fake site. They don't realize it's fake. They enter their credentials, and then the attacker has your credentials. So banks and ISPs have tried to fight this by setting up sites like www.antiphishing.org, try to get the word out, but this is definitely not easy. These phishing websites show up for a day and then they disappear. There's all kinds of techniques that they use, like fast flux DNS, where they map these websites to IP addresses, and they change that mapping like every hour or every few hours. And so for example, one IP address was tracked to a hijacked home computer that was part of a botnet, and this was in San Francisco, and the owner was completely unaware that this was happening on their computer, that people were using their computer to serve out fake websites, things like that. There were also features in things like Internet Explorer. So Microsoft, their browser, their old browser was called Internet Explorer. The new one is Edge. And so there was, a while ago, there was a feature, or not actual good feature, it was just like feature in double quotes, used in phishing and farming. So took advantage of the fact that not everyone pays real close attention to URLs displayed in browsers. But for those who do, if you look at your URLs, it turned out that Microsoft Internet Explorer features helped these fishermen. So Internet Explorer did not display any characters in the URL that's in your address bar after, let's say, ASCII 00 or 01. If they come just before an @ character. So this was just a bad code or bad practice or something. And so the result was that if you had an address like this, http://www.mybank.com, and then you had these characters, %01, %00, so these ASCII 00 or 01 characters, and then an @ and then the actual domain, which was www.hack.com. So this was just all of this com %01 %00 at www. All of that was just a subdomain address, and so was all of this, a subdomain, so on. So it turned out that the actual site you were going to was hack.com. That's just a made-up site that's stand-in for some malevolent or evil site. And as a result of the way IE or Internet Explorer processed these URLs, it showed up, this complete address showed up as just www.mybank.com. So if you're looking for your bank and you looked in the URL, this is what you would see, even though that was not actually the actual site. This was just part of the IP, part of the fully qualified domain name. So as a result, this was a vulnerability for, if people were checking to make sure that what appears in your browser is what you expect, then they would be fooled by this IE feature. So this vulnerability was reported when people saw it December 9th, 2003, but it was actually seen in a phishing attack few days later, 9 days later. And the patch didn't appear for a couple more months, February 2nd. So this was back when Microsoft had a very poor response to security vulnerabilities. There are also spoofing sites. So this is a fairly recent one. You might end up with a site that maybe is well known. So for this was one that was used in this proof of concept. It showed the site as being https://www.apple.com, and it turns out this might not have been where you wanted to go, because it tells you that this is not actually the Apple site, even though everything up in the URL seems to indicate that everything's okay. You have your padlock, which is sign that everything is secure, and then you're going to apple.com, but it might not actually be where you want it to go. So you might take a look, click on the padlock, and this is what you would see in Firefox. You click on the padlock and it says www.apple.com, secure connection, everything looks good, it's even verified. You click on my information and you get this information about the page, looks right, www.apple.com. However, the owner information doesn't look right. It says this website does not supply ownership information. So not a good sign. And if you look at this, everything looks normal. And if you look at the technical details, you see the usual things. TLS is transport layer security, and you see the elliptic curve, Diffie-Hellman encryption, RSA with advanced encryption standard with 128-bit security, and the Galois counter module for block cipher, and plus you use SHA-256. All of these things look just great. Everything looks right, but it turns out you're not actually going to apple.com, even though Apple might use all of these technical cryptographic protocols. It may even have a certificate, but that's where you would find the problem. So if I go back to here, you can you can click on this and view the certificate, and there you would see a problem in that the common name for the site is not apple.com. And so it turned out this was just spoofing the alphabet using Unicode. So someone figured out how to make these spoof domains that made it look like it was coming from apple.com, but was actually using Unicode. So click on this link on the PDF if you have access to the PDF to see how people can spoof the alphabet for these websites. Okay, so these days local area networks mainly Ethernet and Wi-Fi. The boundaries of these networks used to be geographical, but it's no longer true. These days you can have layer 2 switches that can have virtual LANs from a set of ports on a switch. So for example, if you have a layer 2 switch with VLAN capability, some of the ports may belong to VLAN, let's say 30, another set of ports might belong to VLAN 10, another set of ports to VLAN 20. And it turns out each one of these VLANs can be connected to each other using a router, but you do have to have a router between these two ports, and so you'd have various routers connecting these 3 virtual LANs. That's managed by one switch. So a lot of switches these days come with this capability. So As a result of this, you can have LANs that are separated geographically. And you can also use virtual private networks, for example, using network address translation to create virtual circuits. So typically, the way network address translation works, you are sitting, let's say, at home, and your machine has this address 192.168.5.34 in your local area network, and your cable modem or your DSL modem has a NAT functionality with the NAT table that says if you see this IP address that's really going to be on the outside, it's going to be this IP address. And this is the address that your internet service provider will give you to the outside interface of your router. This will go through the internet to, let's say, another router which is given this outside interface IP address 139.226.20.1, and this also might have a NAT table which says that this internal private IP address 10.10.10.55 will be known outside as 139.226.20.22. So you have an internal set of IP addresses on each side and external set of IP addresses that are provided by either your organization or your ISP. So how does local network identity work? You have MAC addresses, and so this is layer 2 addresses. So layer 3, remember, is IP addresses. Layer 2, you have MAC addresses. And each networking interface that you have, so for example, if you have a laptop, it probably has at least two networking interfaces. One would be its Wi-Fi connection, and the other would be its Ethernet connection. If you have a smartphone, chances you have at least two. One would be your Wi-Fi connection, and the other one would be your Bluetooth connection. And in all of these cases, these MAC addresses are 6-byte, what are called media access control, or MAC addresses. So it turns out if you have some public access points, for example, Wi-Fi access points, they can actually get your MAC addresses, and if someone like the NSA, if they choose to, they can actually put these access points all over a big city or even small towns, and they can basically track everyone in a city using your MAC addresses, because these are supposed to be unique. And so your device has a MAC address that's burned into the actual chips, and so that uniquely identifies you, and as a result, people like the NSA or some other organization can potentially track you. To counter this, companies like Apple, what they do is they generate fake MAC addresses or random MAC addresses when you scan for access points, and then only when you're ready to connect does your phone or your laptop hand out the actual MAC addresses. So that's one layer of protection. So the reason Apple does this once again is that to avoid you, the owner of a Mac OS machine or an iPhone or iPad, iPod, to prevent you from being tracked by people. Okay, so next up we'll have part 5.